Welcome to Phillip Island, Victoria in Australia. What a setting we have for this great sporting contest, the Little Penguin Sea to Dune race. Nervous moments always as they gather on the beach, the tension mounting, and away they go. There's the defending champion, wearing his familiar navy blue and white, great waddling style. Another pre-race favourite though, losing touch with the pack. Maybe that's why. A few too many fish in the day's feeding. There's a familiar face, Skip McIntyre, 8 times a champion back in the 90s, a very successful coach now, keeping a keen eye on proceedings. This the leading group, 1 or 2 still able to put on a show for the camera, others just ploughing straight over it. Some resorting to shortcuts. Sad that cheating has crept into this beautiful sport. The judges will have a look at that. But up at the front, the pace is relentless, closing in on those sand dunes that will offer a bed for the night. The fatigue starting to tell. Who's got the finishing kick up on the outside? What a turn of pace from that one, whichever one it is. No answer from the rest, and he takes victory. What a win. There we are, into the Burrow, building an extension with his winnings, and back tomorrow to try and defend his title here on Phillip Island.
Welcome to our special Penguin Awareness Day edition of Live Penguin TV. My name's Megan. I'm going to be your host tonight as we watch our little penguins coming out of the water, crossing the beach and making their way back to their burrows here on Phillip Island. Tonight I'm joined by Stephen. Stephen, come on in, tell us what you'll be doing tonight.
Hello everybody, it's so good to be back on Penguin Live TV. I'm going to be the chat moderator tonight, so if you have any questions, please put them in the messages on Facebook and YouTube, and I'll try and pass those along to Megan. Really looking forward to this, it should be a fun one.
Fantastic, thank you Stephen. So yes, send me all your penguin-y questions, your trickiest, most burning questions, maybe things we haven't talked about in a little while. It's been a while since we've done our last Penguin TV, so we are really excited to be bringing the little penguins back to you all tonight. And we are on Phillip Island, also known as Millau. And Millau is the traditional name of Phillip Island, given to it by the Bunurong. And the Bunurong have been coming here for thousands of years to Millau. They are the traditional custodians of this land, so I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge the Bunurong and their elders past, present and emerging as the custodians of the land that our little penguins are on tonight, that Stephen and myself are on tonight. And I would love you all to put in the comments where you are watching from, and if you do know the traditional custodians of the land that you're on, pop that in the comments as well and acknowledge those people. So thank you for joining us, and we are bringing the penguins to you from Phillip Island as well as Phillip Island Nature Parks, and that's who we are. Managing our beautiful penguin colony here on Phillip Island. And we are a tourism-funded conservation organisation. So we're very excited to have our doors open once again, and we have guests down here at the Penguin Parade. But we don't just look after penguins, we do look after over 20% of Phillip Island. So we do also manage our Koala Reserve, Churchill Island Heritage Farm, the Nobby's Antarctic Journey, our colony of about 20,000 Australian fur seals, our entire southern coastline of beaches that we're looking out over tonight, and many of our beautiful wetlands, woodlands, even internationally recognised wetlands as well. So and we do have some penguins. I'll zoom in on them. So there is a lot of little creatures and conservation areas and even heritage areas that we do look after here at Phillip Island Nature Park. So if you do want to help us out with the work we do here, you can buy a ticket to any of those places I mentioned. Come and see the penguins, the koalas, our beautiful farm animals on Churchill Island, and you are contributing to the work that we do here. We do also have our online shop that you can find on our website, and you can also help us out by donating and adopting a penguin. Now, it is a symbolic adoption. If you haven't met one of our little penguins before, they don't make the best pets. But if you do adopt a penguin, you can help contribute to the work that we do, looking after penguins to rehabilitate them in our wildlife clinic if they're sick or injured, to go towards our penguin research, doing things like investigating different penguin diseases, or helping to future-proof our penguin colony into the future through against different threats that they might be facing. And these little guys, as you can see, are the smallest of all species of penguin. They don't get their name little penguin for no reason. They are only about a foot tall. They only weigh about 1 kilo. And they're running back in the water because it is still quite bright. We weren't expecting the penguins quite so early tonight. They do have a lot of beach to cross, a long way to go, and they are only quite small. And crossing the beach, what we're going to see tonight is the most scary and most dangerous part of our penguins' day, which is why they have run back. They've been out here for the last few days likely, and tonight they've decided they're going to come back to their burrows. So they've been forming groups just offshore, groups that we call rafts, and they've been looking at the horizon up where our camera is, trying to decide when it's dark enough to cross the beach. And they've decided it's not quite dark enough yet, but dark enough that they're going to come up onto shore and check it out. And right now, they are really vulnerable to any birds of prey that might be hanging around. Things like sea eagles, Pacific gulls, swamp harriers that are really big and might try and make a penguin into a snack. So that's why they wait till it gets dark when those birds of prey go to roost for the night, and they come in these groups that we'll see tonight for safety in numbers as they're crossing this big dangerous beach. They're really well camouflaged and hard to see when they're out in the ocean, but you can see as soon as they pop up onto the sand, their little white bellies are really conspicuous, and they're quite easy to see for those predators. So right now, that little group of penguins is looking around, making sure the coast is clear, making sure there aren't any birds of prey hanging around before they make that dangerous dash across the beach. Do we have a question?
Yeah, a few people are wondering how many penguins we had last night. I got that number in front of me.
Has everyone got their guesses in?
I don't think anybody's been guessing because they weren't able to watch the stream.
Fair.
So we won't make you guess tonight. Last night the penguins started crossing the beach at about 9:20, so we've got maybe 10 minutes before we're expecting them to really make a good effort to cross the beach. And we had 1,632 penguins last night.
Very good penguin numbers last night, and that's considering what's going on in our little penguin colony. So I think last time we joined you all for Live Penguin TV, we were in the midst of the penguin breeding season. There were chicks running around looking for mum and dad. There were penguin parents sitting on eggs, and now we are heading into the end of the breeding season. So we do still have some penguin parents coming back to feed chicks. They're usually right now being left home alone, getting up to a bit of mischief, coming out of their burrows, running around looking for mum and dad. We do have a few late penguins who are sitting on eggs. There's not many, but there are a couple still having a last-ditch effort at breeding. But what's actually starting to happen is the penguins that have finished their breeding for the season are getting ready to molt. So tonight we want to keep our eyes peeled for some big, chunky penguins. Because when they have to molt, they have very special waterproof feathers. So they can't lose and replace them gradually like other birds. They have to do what we call a catastrophic molt. So they have to spend about 2 to 3 weeks here on land, losing and replacing all of their feathers. And they can't eat when they're on land, they only eat out at sea. So when they're spending a couple of weeks here, they are fasting. So they have to more than double their body weight before they molt, and sometimes they are so fat that they can't even stand up to cross the beach. So just on their bellies, pulling themselves along with their flippers and their feet. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for some early molters tonight, struggling to make their way across the beach. They're probably going to be at the back of the group trying to keep up. And if you've come to visit our penguins throughout the breeding season, I highly recommend coming back during the molt because it is my favorite time of year. The cute little chicks, they're adorable and fun to watch, but the molters are hilarious because they are big and chunky, they're itchy, their new feathers are pushing out their old ones, they're hungry, so they are just super grumpy. They don't want to be here, they have a lot of attitude, so they are hilarious to watch. We just had a bird fly across the screen, which has given the penguins a bit of a fright. They're running back in the water, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a predator that has frightened our penguins back in the water. It could have just been a seagull that flew over, and any bird they see, they're going to err on the side of caution, and they're going to go back into the water where they feel safe. And our little penguins, as well as being the smallest species of penguin, they are also the only species with blue and white feathers. All the other species do have black feathers along their back, and these little guys are blue. So you might also know them as little blue penguins, or fairy penguins. That is all these little guys, our little penguins. They are found all along the southern coast of Australia and in New Zealand. And our colony here on Phillip Island is actually the largest. So we actually have about 40,000 penguins here on Phillip Island. And that number has been updated recently with some of our most recent penguin research and our surveys we do to monitor the population, that our population is doing so well that we've gone up to roughly around 40,000 penguins, which is fantastic. And what we're seeing down here at the Penguin Parade, watching here on Live Penguin TV, is only 10% of our entire penguin colony. So by seeing these penguins, by people coming to view them, you're actually helping us to protect that entire colony of around 40,000. And they are doing really well. Here on Phillip Island, we're very lucky that we've been able to manage the threats that our penguins are facing and help protect them. It is Penguin Awareness Day, so I do want to acknowledge that there are 18 different species of penguin, and not all of them are doing as well as our little penguin. 5 species are endangered, and numbers are dropping, so it's really important that we do acknowledge some of the threats that our penguins are facing, not just here on Phillip Island, but all around the world. And it looks like our little penguins are going to try and make a break for it. And right now, as they are crossing, we do have a ranger with a pair of binoculars trained on these penguins, waiting until they get more than halfway across the beach to start our official penguin count for this evening. So, as Stephen said, we had just over 1,600 penguins last night, and we do have someone counting each and every night. We're not just making that number up. It is someone's job each night to count them. So if you want to try your hand at penguin counting, if you want to maybe come and work for us one day as a penguin ranger, see how you go counting these penguins. There's a nice small group, so it won't be too hard to start off. And let us know in the comments how many penguins you think cross. And if our penguin ranger isn't too busy, they might be able to let us know what some of these group sizes are. And they're very confident for such a small group of penguins to make their way across the sand so early in the evening. But I can see they're making a beeline for the rocks, because although they're really conspicuous on the sand, they can hide in the rocks to get a bit of extra camouflage. Guys, I just said you were being brave. What are you doing running back? You almost made it. Some of them are in the rocks, some of them have run back. This is why our penguin counters wait till they get more than halfway before they start to count, because they do know they're safest in the water. So if they get a fright, they're going to run back. And in each penguin group, there isn't a leader. So it just takes 1 or 2 brave penguins to start waddling along the beach, and they'll all follow. Alternatively, as you can see, it just takes a couple of scared penguins to make a break back to the water, and some of them will follow. And this little group here is split into 2. So if you've already counted them, you're gonna have to count them again. And this happens every night. One night I was counting the penguins, and I counted this massive group. I think it must have been over 100 penguins. And as they got up to the rocks, a goose flew down, scared a heap of penguins up into the colony, a heap of them back in the water, and there was no way I could tell how many went each way. So we do our best to count the penguins each night, but we can never be perfect. We have been counting the penguins using that method since 1968. Just a person with a pair of binoculars. So we always have that similar amount of error in our penguin count, just so that we can compare the numbers over all of those years. And we have seen not just an increase in our penguin numbers through our surveying methods, but through our penguins crossing the beach and counting them. We have seen increases in the numbers crossing the beach. And this breeding season, we actually had a new penguin record. We had 4,400 and, what was it, Stephen? 4,432 penguins in 50 minutes. I'm glad I was not counting that night. That would have been a difficult one to try and count all of those little penguins across the beach. And we do also have a wallaby on the beach trying to steal the show.
We do have one question.
Yeah.
The viewers want to know if Bluey has come back.
So Bluey was our little chick who fledged from our penguin burrow with our burrow cam. It was over a year ago now, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Gosh, time flies. So Bluey would have spent his first year of life out at sea. I'm just going to try and follow these penguins. They're going to come up on the rocks here somewhere. So when young penguins fledge, they're about 8 to 10 weeks old. They make their first journey out to sea. So our little penguin who was in our burrow cam, he did make it out into the ocean, and then they have to learn how to be a penguin. So it's really, really tough for that first year of life for those little guys, learning how to find food, figuring out how to do pretty much everything, swimming, feeding, sleeping on the ocean. All those things have got to be big and scary for a young penguin. So hopefully Bluey figured out how to do all of that, and he's done really well. And if that's the case, he probably would have come back to land about a year after he fledged. So he's probably come back, checked out the area, made sure everything's still where he left it, and he's probably headed back out, because they really only come in for a quick check when they're a year old, and then they don't need to come back again until they need to molt. So he will come back to molt, and then he'll spend the rest of that next year mostly out at sea, until he has to come back to breed for the first time. So end of this year, hopefully Bluey will come back and he'll be ready to breed after he'll be a couple years old by then, and that's when penguins usually start to breed for the first time, and he'll be spending a bit more time on land. And little Bluey, I'm pretty sure he got a microchip, just like any of the penguins that live in our penguin research burrows. And some of the penguins we have here might even be going back to some of our research boxes. So in the colony, just behind where these penguins are crossing, we do have some boxes with some little numbers on them. They get checked about once every 2 weeks. And each penguin that lives in those boxes gets a little microchip in the back of its neck, like what you might have in your pet cat or your dog. So we can scan them and we know exactly who they are. So little Bluey or any other penguin, they all look the same to me. So the only way we can really tell them apart is by actually scanning that microchip. And we don't normally give them names. So Bluey's unique in that he has a name. Mostly they have a series of letters and numbers, and that's how we tell who they are. And we do have a big chunky penguin here. The others are resting. He's trying to make his way to the front of the group. I think he's trying to get a head start so he doesn't get left behind. But this penguin, I would say, is getting ready to molt. He looks a lot bigger than the others. The others might still be coming back to feed chicks. There are still a few chicks around in the colony, but his little ones have probably headed out, and now he's fattening up for the molt. And it does take a lot of energy, a few weeks of constant feeding to put on enough weight to be fit enough to molt.
I really like how he got to the grass and then had a bit of a lie down. Get to the comfy spot before he has a quick nap.
Yeah, I think he made a good choice, but I feel like he's really worried about getting left behind with these other 2 penguins. So he's sticking close by, but we'll see what the other penguins are up to. And speaking of Bluey, we actually have, I say we don't often name our penguins, but there was another little penguin that we have had here recently who was named Red. And little Red, you might have seen his story in the news today. He was a penguin who was actually found malnourished here on Phillip Island. So he was really skinny. He'd had trouble finding some food. And he was actually rescued and taken to our wildlife hospital here at Phillip Island Nature Parks. Oh, and here's another nice big group of penguins. So little Red, he's been at our Penguin Wildlife Clinic for just over a month now, and he was actually able to be released into the wild yesterday, just in time for Penguin Awareness Day. it took a lot of time and effort to give him some fluids, some medication, feed him up with heaps of pilchards and get him a good enough weight so that he was healthy enough to go out. But he was just released into the wild. So we're wishing Red all the best. And that is what you guys can help us fund by donating to the Penguin Foundation. Just a small donation does help us to have enough funding to be able to look after those sick and injured penguins that come into our wildlife clinic. And we don't just look after penguins. Like I said earlier, we have all those different sites we manage. So if you do jump on the Penguin Foundation website, you can actually adopt all types of animals. You can adopt a hooded plover, you can adopt a bandicoot, you can adopt a short-tailed shearwater, all of the wonderful animals that you might see here. If you come to visit Phillip Island, you can help us protect them as well. We have a nice big group of penguins. This is going to be a little bit trickier for our penguin counter, especially since they just are going through the rocks. Unlike that first group that kind of made a little bit of a dash through the sand, these guys know what's up and they are moving through the rocks nice and camouflaged, ready to lie down at any moment. I do find that the penguins are a little bit more nervous, stick really close to the ground to hide their little white bellies so that they are a little bit harder to see. And that certainly works out for them when they are hiding in the rocks.
I might ask Carrie how many penguins cross the beach over at Penguins Plus. We'll try and get that number to everybody who's been having a bit of a guess in the comments.
Yeah. I hope all our penguin counters are having fun trying to count them. See how you go with this group. This group's a bit more challenging. I don't think I want to be counting tonight with that big open beach and all those rocks. And the tide being out does make it especially hard for these little guys. Sometimes the water comes right up to these rocks they're climbing over right now, and they're out of the water and up in their burrows before you even know what's going on. But tonight they do have an especially tough journey ahead of them. Especially because once they cross the beach, some of these penguins might be walking up to 2 kilometres to get back to their burrows. And that's being only a foot tall and having knees that can't bend. So that's why they have their funny little waddle. We do like to call a group of penguins on land a waddle of penguins because of that funny little way that they walk. And some of them, they do have a very long way to go. So that's why we see them often having little rests along the way. You don't have to be a big chunky molting penguin to have to need a rest on the way home, especially if you live up in the suburbs. They can't all have the prime real estate like these penguins living down here near the beach. Some of them do have a long way to go. We have some here having a bit of a rest, and if you've watched live penguin TV before, these rocks here have a few names, the Salon, the resting rocks, because this is often where these little guys like to stop and have a rest. And what you can see a lot of them doing is preening their feathers. Because those feathers are so special, they do need to realign them. They have all these little hooks and barbs so they interlock together. So water should never touch a penguin's skin, even if they're spending a month or a year out in the ocean. So they do need to constantly preen, keep those feathers nice and aligned. They have a little oil gland under their tail, so you might see them putting their beaks down, getting some oil, putting that through and conditioning their beautiful feathers. They've got to make sure they look good before they head home to their burrow. You know, they might be seeing a special someone. They might be going back and greeting their partner. They might be going back and feeding their chicks, although that is a little bit of a messier affair. I did see some penguins coming back and feeding their chicks last night, which was really exciting. But the little penguin chicks, they are just extremely hungry. There's no care or grace about it. They just run up to mum and dad, pretty much chirping away, saying, "Feed me, feed me, feed me! I'm so hungry, mum. I haven't had food in a whole day. Give me some food, please." And they will fight over the food. And usually the parent will just give them a few feeds, go a couple meters away, have a break, have a breather, and then come back and give them a little bit more food, because they are relentless and they are never full. These little guys can bring back about 1/3 of their own body weight in fish to feed those little chicks, and they are never satisfied. It does take about 14 kilos of fish over that 8 to 10 weeks to raise one chick to fledgling. So it is a huge effort by these little guys to raise those chicks, to make sure they're big and fat and healthy enough to be able to survive once they go out to sea.
So we've had a few guesses for how many penguins have crossed the beach. I'll jump in before we get any more groups crossing. We had in total 79 penguins
79
in that first group. Yep.
in that first group.
Well, in
Wow.
the first big group, I should say.
Yeah, that other group was a bit smaller than that, wasn't it? Oh, I was a little bit slow, but we have some penguins on the highway. I'll zoom around and see if I can get their little bottoms as they waddle away. There they go. There's penguin peak hour traffic right now as these little guys make their way back to their burrows. And this perspective I love because this is what you might see in the morning when the penguins have spent a few days here on land feeding their chicks or socializing or catching up with their partners. In the morning, an hour or two before sunrise is when they head back out to sea to go fishing again, searching for that food. It is what they spend most of their time doing, diving up and down each and every day, looking for small fish, pilchards, anchovies, jellyfish, pretty much anything that these little guys can fit in their mouths, they'll have a bit of a munch on. I even heard recently that penguins have even been seen eating the occasional seahorse. And they think that might be when they're coming in their raft and they're coming to shallow waters, like, oh, what's that? Oh, I'll eat it. So they're certainly not fussy. They'll have a bit of a munch on anything that they can find. And you kind of don't blame them when they are desperate to find enough food to feed those hungry little chicks. Or when they're getting ready for molt and they have to more than double their body weight. I can't imagine having to do something like that. I guess it's kind of like us just eating a heap of fast food and chocolate, getting ready for the winter. Our little penguins getting ready for their molt, and it is getting ready for winter for them as well. They do need to lose and replace all their feathers because winter is when they're going to start spending longer out at sea, spending up to a month out there, traveling not just 30 or 50 kilometres, but hundreds of kilometres from here. Sometimes they can go as far as the South Australia border, where there's a big nutrient upwelling, where they get lots of food out there in winter. This time of year, they're not going too far. They're sticking pretty close to the coast here, going maybe about 30 kilometres or so if they're coming back to feed some hungry chicks. I might see if we've got another question, Stephen.
Yeah, well, one of my interesting questions was, how did this year's breeding season compare to last year's breeding season?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't think we've gotten the official numbers for this year's breeding season just yet because our penguins are still breeding. They are still having a last little go at it. This year wasn't quite as good as last year. This year there was a couple little drops in the food supply, and there's a few different ways we can see. Sorry, I'm just trying to move my camera around a little bit. So we can see how the parents are doing, and that's by looking at how long they're spending out at sea and by their weights when they do come back onto land. And we can actually tell that really easily because we do have a little penguin weighbridge. Up near the main viewing stands here at the Penguin Parade in a natural penguin pathway is a little bridge that the penguins walk through happily, and as they do, it weighs them and scans their microchip. So the penguins that come through there, we know how long they've been out at sea and we know how much weight they've been able to put on. And this breeding season, when some of the penguins had guard chicks, when their chicks were only really little, there wasn't as much food as would have been ideal. So they didn't do as well as they did last year. We had a little bit of a drop in the breeding success, but food's picked back up again. So hopefully those chicks that are still around will do well. They'll fledge, they'll head out to sea, and then they'll come back to breed in a couple of years. But last year there was just an abundance of food. Our penguins started breeding really, really early. They had their first clutch of chicks out and fledged by the end of the year, and they had their second ones ready to go. So last year was just an extraordinary breeding season. We've had several of those in the last few years. So that's something that has contributed to our penguin numbers, or I would say contributed to our penguin numbers increasing, is just in the last few years having some incredible breeding seasons and lots of chicks heading out and then coming back to breed. This year was probably an average one, which is perfectly fine. Each year we expect to have those dips and troughs because we have a natural penguin colony here. We don't interfere with our little penguins unless they are sick or injured, and if it is something caused by humans, that's when we intervene to look after these little guys. But otherwise, they are a wild colony. We don't feed them. We occasionally give them a little wooden box to live in to help them come back to places where humans have disturbed their habitat. But otherwise, they look after themselves pretty well.
And we had a question. How much do the chicks weigh when they're hatched?
So when they hatch out of their little eggs, their eggs are about the size of a chicken egg, and they only weigh about 35 to 40 grams. So they would fit right in the palm of your hand there. They would sit there, and they have black fluff, and they can't even hold their heads up, and their little eyes are closed. So they're very cute. But because they're so small, they can't regulate their own body temperature. They need constant little meals. So for the first 2 to 4 weeks, one of the parents will stay in the burrow with those little chicks, giving them food, giving them warmth, and looking after them to make sure that they're protected until they are old enough to stay home alone.
I had a really good experience when I went penguin handling about a year ago. I was out in the field, and we going out and giving the penguins a bit of a health check in the colony as the researchers. And I opened up a box, and there was a penguin sitting on an egg, and one of the eggs had hatched, which was really exciting. We saw it brand new, and one of the eggs had hatched, the other egg hadn't hatched. And that was really exciting. And what we found was the shell, half of the shell had covered the non-hatched egg. And the penguin wouldn't have been able to escape unless we had kind of helped it out. So Paula, who I was with, took charge. She's a bit more confident in the field than I am. And she grabbed the little half shell off the egg, and we could start seeing the baby trying to start cracking its way out. It was definitely trying to make an attempt to hatch right in front of our eyes. And I think it was the highlight of my year last year. It was pretty exciting.
That's amazing, Stephen. That's so cute. Oh, I went over to see if there was any penguins in their burrow, and one of them went straight back inside, and we have a couple of geese. But it is amazing when you see those freshly hatched little chicks, or them breaking out of the egg is incredible because the parents don't really help them too much. They have a little egg tooth on their beak, and they just peck their way out, and sometimes you can hear them chirping from inside the egg. They're not even out of the egg yet, and they're saying, "Mum, Dad, I'm hungry." So very demanding, and yes, very cute.
People have been wondering about Bruce the goose.
Bruce the goose. You did see, I'll bring the camera back over to see our little goose friends here. So yes, we have had over the last year of Penguin TV our friends Bruce and Lucy Goosey, who do like to hang out down here at the Penguin Parade, causing mischief amongst our penguin colony. And I'll zoom out. There they are. They're just having a little bit of a sleep, so not causing any mischief tonight. But I would say that's our friends Bruce and Lucy, because Cape Barren geese, they are quite territorial. They don't really tolerate other goose couples coming into their territory. So they're all happy here, having a bit of a snooze, not bothering our penguins tonight. But if you haven't seen a goose-penguin interaction before, the geese don't try and eat the penguins. The geese strictly are herbivores. They eat the grass, but the penguins and geese don't really get along. So sometimes the geese do like to stand in the middle of the penguin pathway, and the penguins have to carefully maneuver around, or we get a bit of a penguin roadblock with the penguins stopping and waiting for the goose to move before they can get past. I have seen a mean goose peck a penguin. I've also seen a penguin peck a goose, so they can give as good as they take. And that's one of the things I love so much about our little penguins, is that they are little, but their attitude more than makes up for it. They are feisty little critters. That's one of the reasons why I said you want a symbolic adoption, you don't want a penguin as a pet. They are feisty, they bite really hard, especially a big male with a big chunky beak. They bite and twist, they have a hooked beak. That's not any fun for anyone. We do only handle them if they're sick or injured, or for research, and even a sick or injured penguin can give you a decent bite. I have done a bit of work with our research team before, and again, only the most notable penguins do get names. So there is one penguin that we did nickname him Mad Max, because he had so much attitude, more than just a standard penguin's feistiness. And when I used to walk out into the colony at night to put little trackers on penguins and take them off, if I ever walked past Max's burrow, he wouldn't run away or just stand there like the other penguins. He would chase me. And he would be biting at the bottom of my pants, running after me, saying, "Wah, wah, get away from my burrow. You're not welcome here." And I really admire that. That they have so much feistiness, so much attitude. They're not afraid to let you know when they're not happy. And another reason you don't want a penguin as a pet is that they have the highest velocity poo of any animal. So they can poo further than I'd say about 1 meter from their body, and it stinks like fish. So you definitely don't want one of these little guys at home. Do you agree, Stephen?
Oh, definitely. I have been pooed on by my fair share of penguins, and it's not fun. Having to work the rest of the night covered in penguin poo.
Definitely not. Dare I say you kind of get used to it? So if you do come here to the Penguin Parade for the first time, it is not just an experience for the eyes, it engages all your senses. You'll be able to smell the lovely aroma of penguin poo, maybe even the fishy soup the parents are feeding to their chicks, and you'll be able to hear all the penguin calls. They'll be doing things like warning each other to stay away from their burrows. The males might be singing a song to try and impress the females. The chicks will be chirping away, calling out for mum and dad. And you'll hear them as they're coming in on the water, hucking, going, huck, 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 calling out to each other to group together. So you'll get all kinds of different calls. Is there any that are your specialty, Stephen, that you'd like to demonstrate?
I'm not very good at my penguin calls.
No? Okay. Oh, there's some coming past the highway. I think my favourite one is what we call the trill. The sometimes I like to do that one out in the penguin colony. I swear sometimes they reply to me. Oh, hello. So yes, they do make a lot of noise because when they come home, it is penguin party time. They don't see each other when they're out in the ocean. So when they come back, they do just love to have a good old chat. That's why once they're across the beach, they're safe. They don't need to stick in their groups, but they do like to stick together to socialise. When they get back to their burrow, they won't go inside. They'll just stand around out the front. They even have what I like to call their little front porch or their veranda because they spend a lot of time out the front. They kind of wear away a little patch of dirt out the front where they stand out the front waiting for their partner, or where their chicks might be waiting for mum and dad, or where the male might be ominously standing yelling at anyone that gets too close to their burrows, because these little guys are quite territorial. They do want to make sure no other penguin gets too close and tries to steal their burrow or their partner, because these little guys, they are what we call socially monogamous. So they do stick with the same partner each season in the same burrow. Oh, so let's just let me try and zoom in on these guys. But they are sexually promiscuous, our little penguins. So they do sneak around and cheat on their partners, the males and the females. So if you do see what I like to call some special penguin cuddles on their way home, it might be a bit of a secret rendezvous. Or if it's at their burrow, that's probably their partner. But they do have usually somewhere between an 18 to 50% divorce rate at the end of each season. Yes, they do get divorced. If they do, they don't split everything 50-50. Normally the male gets to keep the burrow and the female has to find a new partner and a new burrow. But she doesn't usually have too much trouble. The females are the ones that get to choose their partners. The males have the job of coming back at the start of the breeding season a couple of weeks before the females, doing the burrow renovation, digging it out, bringing in the nesting material, and then standing around out the front, doing a bit of a song and a dance to try and impress a girlfriend. So it is a bit of hard work for the males to try and impress a female. So I'd say they want to hold on to their partner where they can. And we do see some penguins staying together for years and years. And those divorce rates vary because of that change in breeding success. And we have a really good season. The penguins are doing really well. They have lower divorce rates. If they have a poor season, they don't do so well, there's not enough food, then they're more likely to get a divorce. It's kind of like, our chicks weren't doing so well this year. You weren't bringing back enough food. I'm going to break up with you. And sorry, I paused because I saw a bandicoot. And where did it go? There he goes. Oh, my camera's not quite quick enough. Let me try and get him. There he is. Our little eastern barred bandicoot in amongst the penguins. They're so quick. I'm struggling to follow him. Oh, there he is. He or she. Oh, how exciting.
Off into the bush, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the bandicoots.
They're so gorgeous. I wish they would just stop and let us get them on camera a little bit more often, but oh, there he is. Hang on, let me zoom back in.
They're a bit skittish, aren't they?
They are. They're not anywhere near as feisty and confident as our little penguins. They will run away quite quickly if you make this a sudden movement. And he's back in the bushes again. But we did get to see him, which is fantastic. And you might have seen those big, bold stripes that give them their name, the Eastern Barred Bandicoot. And we always get so excited when we see a bandicoot here on Live Penguin TV because these guys were almost extinct. They were classified as extinct in the wild here on the Australian mainland, mainly because of things like loss of habitat and foxes, some of the threats that have also faced our little penguins over their time here on Phillip Island. So to help protect all our wildlife here on Phillip Island, we have actually had a fox eradication program to get rid of all the foxes on the island, and we've been officially fox free now since 2017. And that's when we were able to introduce these little Eastern Barred Bandicoots onto Phillip Island to help save them from extinction. And last year they were actually able to be reclassified from extinct in the wild to simply endangered, which still isn't ideal, but to see them running around in the wild here on Phillip Island is just incredible. So if you've seen the penguins before, but you've never seen a bandicoot, come back here. Look for bandicoots. They're here on Phillip Island, not just on the Summerland Peninsula or on Churchill Island now where they were initially introduced. They have started to spread all across the island, which is incredible. Their numbers have increased rapidly and they're doing really well for an animal that was once almost extinct. And that's something that we're able to do with the amazing funding that we get from our visitors and all of you who help us out by purchasing something in our shop or buying a ticket to our attractions or helping by donating to the Penguin Foundation. Adopting a penguin, adopt a bandicoot. It does all go back into the conservation, education and research work that we do here at Phillip Island Nature Parks. And do we have any last few questions, Stephen? I feel like I've been talking for a long time.
I haven't seen a question for a while, but a lot of people are enjoying that we've had a lot of the favorite cast members coming back, like Bandicoot and Bruce the Goose. I think there's been requests for Ricali's and Swampies as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, we had a Swampy at the very start on the beach. He wasn't getting right up in the camera, but I'll keep my eyes peeled for a Ricali.
The dried up creek bed might not help us out with that one.
Yes, yeah. They do like to have a little bit more water around if we want a Ricali to come out and about. But we do certainly have a lot of penguins, which is absolutely fantastic, making their way back to their burrows. And what's that bandicoot on the beach now? Yep. Pretty sure that's a bandicoot in the seaweed behind the penguins there, which again I love seeing because the bandicoots naturally never lived near the beach or on a beach, but here on Phillip Island they've adapted to where they're living, and we've actually found by looking at their poo, which we love to do when we're studying wildlife, is seeing that they're eating little crustaceans and things that they're finding in the sand, which is amazing. So the little bandicoots are making the most of their island home. And we can't have a live Penguin TV without talking a bit more about poo, because you know we also love to collect penguin poo. And that's actually one of the things that we first showed us that penguins were eating sea jellies. So we say now, oh yeah, they eat fish and jellyfish, but a long time we only knew that they were eating fish and squid because we were finding fish ear bones and squid beaks when we were flushing their stomachs and looking at what was inside. We found all these little hard bits, but they just digest the jellyfish so quick. It's pretty much in one end and out the other It's not very much nutrition. Our penguin expert, Dr. Andre, we call him Professor Penguin, was actually saying the other day that it's kind of like us eating celery or lettuce. You probably put in more effort digesting it than you get from eating it, but they do it anyway. They fill up their little bellies with jellyfish, and we never knew they did that till we actually took that penguin poo, extracted the DNA, did all those fancy things they do in the lab to work out what that DNA has come from, and found out that they were eating jellyfish, which is amazing. Little jellyfish, not the big ones that are going to sting them and hurt them, but just little sea jellies that they'll happily munch on when they're out at sea, diving up and down, looking for food.
I have an interesting question from Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
She's wondering if a female doesn't find a partner but does mate with a random male, would she incubate the egg and be a single parent?
So single parents don't really exist in the wild for our little penguins, unfortunately, because it takes about 35 days to incubate those eggs to hatching, and no one parent can do that by themselves. I did see this breeding season, there was an adult who stayed on the eggs for 15 days, waiting for her partner to come back. And when he didn't come back, it was actually just as the eggs were hatching. Unfortunately, she was starving and she was forced to abandon the nest. So I don't think any one penguin could get through incubation, let alone feeding those two hungry little chicks. So single parenthood isn't really an option for these little penguins, unfortunately. But it was really interesting to see that penguin's dedication, spending 15 days on land. And it actually happened that the penguin who spent 15 days away from his partner, away from the burrow, actually had a little tracker on him. So we were able to see why he spent so long out at sea. And what he actually did was, instead of coming out of Phillip Island and turning left like all the other penguins, he went right. He ended up near Torquay, which is where none of these guys go this time of year. And then he's like, this isn't where I meant to go. Turned around and went back to the feeding grounds where all the other penguins were before coming back onto land. So we did a little bit of research, and he was actually a penguin who was newly microchipped this breeding season. So we think he was a young boy. He didn't quite know what he was doing. So he's probably learnt his lesson for next year. Now he knows where to go. You don't go to Torquay to find your food. It's a little bit far to go when your partner's at home sitting on the eggs waiting for you to come back.
I remember that penguin. Jordan and I went out one night because we were, you told us you were waiting for the tracker to come back.
That's right.
And Jordan and I were counting penguins. I think this was during one of our lockdowns when nobody was here. So we were huddled in the skybox counting penguins together, and we saw the tracker coming up on the beach, and we're like, great, we'll go grab it.
And that's when I resigned myself to this penguin never coming back.
Yeah. And I remember it was a bit of a lightning storm that night.
Mm-hmm.
The lightning was really rolling in fast and quick, so we raced out into the colony as fast as we could, jumped over the fence, quickly as we could walk through a penguin colony without accidentally squishing a penguin under our feet.
We don't want that.
Jumped on the penguin, grabbed it, got the tracker off, chucked it back into the colony as fast as we could.
Gently.
As delicately as we could, but as quickly as we could, because by the time we got that tracker off, it started thumping down with rain. And I mean those big, fat drops of rain. We were drenched when we got back.
And I was very appreciative that
You did buy us chocolate bars, I remember that.
I did, because it was my job to get that tracker back, and I thought that I had a whole week of coming out each night to wait for this penguin to come back, because as soon as their nests get abandoned, he would have come back, and he wouldn't have stayed on land. He would have been like, my nest has failed, I'm going to head back out to sea. So it was really important. We went out and got that tracker, so I was so impressed that Stephen and Jordan managed to brave the lightning and get that for me. And then we were able to get that amazing data to see where this crazy little guy actually ended up going. So it's incredible the things we're able to learn about our little penguins, because we do a lot of research about them here on land. But when they go out to sea, for a long time, it was a big mystery as to what they do. So by putting trackers on them, collecting their poo, doing all that fun stuff that we do, is able to inform us a lot more about what they're doing out in the ocean, which is really important if we want to help protect them, because they do spend 80% of their life out there, and it is what drives their entire life cycle is food availability. If there's not enough food, these guys can't breed and our colony couldn't be thriving. So if we know where they're feeding, we can help protect those areas and help protect our penguins' food source. And that's important for penguins all around the world, because one of their biggest threats is loss of food from the fishing industry. So if you're choosing to eat seafood, one really important thing you can do to help protect our penguins is trying to choose sustainably sourced seafood from sustainable fisheries and not contribute to the decline of our penguins' food sources. And that goes for from any fish you're getting from anywhere around the world. And another big one for Penguin Awareness Day is trying to reduce our use of single-use plastics and making sure these things aren't ending up in our colony. We've had a wild and windy week here at Phillip Island, which means lots of rubbish ends up in our penguin colony, where it can end up in penguin burrows, can impact on their eggs, or that they end up eating or becoming entangled in, which can even cause death. So one big one we're seeing a lot of now, of course, is masks in our penguin colony. So while you're all protecting yourselves and wearing those masks, when you take them off, make sure that they do end up in the bin. And one really simple thing you can do if you're disposing of them is to break the straps, so that they don't form a loop, they can't get tangled around any of our wildlife if they do end up in their habitat in the ocean or out in the colony. So lots of little things we can help do to help protect not just our little penguins, but the plight of penguins around the world. They're not all as lucky as our little penguins to be doing so well as these ones here on Phillip Island. So raising awareness about these little guys is one of the best things we can do to help protect them, as well as helping out conservation organisations. Doing things like adopting a penguin or coming to visit these little guys here at Phillip Island do make a big difference, and helping look after things like our bandicoots, those endangered and threatened species as well. So I think we're coming to the end of our live Penguin TV. We do hope you've all had a fantastic night. It looks like we've had oodles of penguins coming back onto land. Hopefully it won't be too long before we're seeing you all again, but we have missed doing this. It's fantastic to have live Penguin TV back for Penguin Awareness Day. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I think we just need to end with a hug off, shall we, Stephen?
Yeah.
All right, bye everybody.
Thanks for tuning in.
Hug